as well our responsibility to deal with human rights matters and to deal with the legacy.
So we went back to the hotel and we got our cameras and our equipment, and we were met at the front door by 4 or 5 police officers.
Either you sign it now, or we send you to a place where they know how to get a confession out of you.
En noviembre de 2022 publicamos en el canal de YouTube de la media inglesa un documental sobre el Mundial de Qatar dividido en 3 partes. La primera, cómo Qatar había amañado la votación. La segunda, cómo miles de trabajadores migrantes habían perdido la vida construyendo las infraestructuras necesarias para el país a causa de unas condiciones de trabajo infrahumanas. Y la tercera, cómo Qatar y FIFA silenciaron a todos los críticos que se atrevieron a hablar. Muchos pensamos que nunca volveríamos a ver esas atrocidades en torno a una Copa del Mundo, pero en diciembre de 2024 FIFA concedió el Mundial de 2034 a Arabia Saudí, y desde entonces la candidatura saudí ha seguido paso por paso el camino que marcó Qatar con anterioridad, desde la votación hasta el silenciamiento de los críticos, pasando por los trabajadores migrantes. Es momento de echar la vista atrás para mirar al futuro a través del testimonio de periodistas especializados, de personas que estuvieron sobre el terreno y sobre todo de Abdullah Ibn Hais, una persona que quiso contar la verdad y acabó 3 años encerrado en una cárcel catarí. Comencemos por la votación. Ya hemos explicado largo y tendido cómo Qatar sobornó al Comité Ejecutivo de FIFA para arrebatarle el Mundial de 2022 a Estados Unidos, de cómo intercambió apoyos con la candidatura rusa para 2018, de cómo Michel Platini cambió su voto tras una reunión en el Elíseo con Nicolás Sarkozy y el emir de Qatar, y muchos otros escándalos que afectaron a los miembros del Comité Ejecutivo. En el caso de Arabia Saudí, la jugada de FIFA y Gianni Infantino ha sido mucho más sutil.
What Saudi has done is, I would say it's even, they are copying the playbook, but they have done it on a bigger scale. Remember that Qatar, for example, they had Al Jazeera paying $100 million. The Asian Football Federation, for example, had a memorandum of understanding with Australia. There were all these deals being done at the time that have largely been forgotten now. If you look at Saudi Arabia, they signed all these memoranda of understanding with more than 100 federations and a couple of confederations as well. And one national team coach who went to visit Saudi Arabia on a training camp with his team basically told me, well, those training camps and those memoranda of understanding are a legal way of bribery.
Además de todos esos acuerdos y sobornos encubiertos, FIFA hizo una jugada maestra dividiendo el Mundial de 2030 entre 3 confederaciones: UEFA con España y Portugal, la Confederación Africana con Marruecos y Conmebol con Argentina, Paraguay y Uruguay. Considerando que el Mundial de 2026 será organizado por CONCACAF y la política de rotación de FIFA, esto dejaba únicamente a la Confederación Asiática y a la Confederación Oceánica como las únicas que podían optar al Mundial de 2034. Así que Arabia Saudí acabó siendo la única candidata para organizar la Copa del Mundo de 2034. Además, Arabia Saudí ha utilizado el Mundial de Clubes y DAZN del mismo modo que Qatar usó Bein como moneda de cambio y método de presión sobre FIFA.
Payment by the branch of the Public Investment Fund for the Club World Cup to DAZN essentially came after FIFA had confirmed that the 2034 World Cup would be staged in Saudi Arabia. So the timing of those machinations, Saudi Public Investment Fund, DAZN Club World Cup, the timing is quite important. And I think going back to Qatar, we obviously had Al Jazeera, which the sports arm became BN Sports. And as you know, beIN Sports has wielded considerable influence in world football in the past decade. Now, with Saudi Arabia, my expectation was that they would also try and set up a sports broadcaster of their own. I think the Club World Cup, as you know, was in dire need of money and support. So they basically rescued that tournament, which is Gianni Infantino's brainchild. The question now is obviously a $1 billion investment in the zone, which is being channeled or funneled to the Club World Cup. That $1 billion represents, it's a drop in the ocean for Saudi Arabia and its public investment fund. The question is, DAZN has for many years been a loss-making operation, bleeding money, which is a bit of an understatement. Their losses are absolutely colossal. So the question becomes, does Saudi want to invest more in DAZN, perhaps take it over, become a majority stakeholder, and build DAZN into, what it once promised to be the Netflix of sports?
Comprar un mundial es fácil, al menos si tienes dinero, pero construir todas las infraestructuras necesarias es más complicado. En el caso de Qatar se construyeron 7 estadios nuevos más la remodelación del Khalifa International Stadium. De esos 8, solo 2 siguen en pie tal y como albergaron el mundial. En el caso de Arabia Saudí, 11 de los 15 estadios se construirán para la ocasión. De hecho, tanto en el caso de Qatar como de Arabia Saudí, no se trata solo de la construcción de estadios, sino también de ciudades enteras. Qatar desarrolló la ciudad de Lusail City, con su marina, su réplica de la Place Vendôme de París y su estadio, por supuesto, donde se celebró la final del Mundial. Y Arabia Saudí no se va a quedar atrás.
The scale of the country is enormous. I think people underestimate how big the Arabian Peninsula is. So you can fly 2.5 hours over Saudi territory, whereas Doha and Qatar were smaller, or as small as Connecticut in the United States. So the sheer scale of Saudi Arabia means that this is, again, like Qatar, an entire country transforming, but simply on a bigger scale. And I think the line in NEOM is the perfect example, not just from the viewpoint that it is an absolutely mad project that is beyond anything that you can possibly imagine. Once you've been there on the ground and you see the scale of construction, it's absolutely mind-boggling. All of these mega projects, in conjunction with World Cup projects, leads to what I believe will be another humanitarian catastrophe without the right protections for workers.
Aunque todavía faltan 9 años para el Mundial de 2034, todas las señales que estamos recibiendo están siendo muy preocupantes. En mayo de 2025, 2 informes de las organizaciones Fair Square y Human Rights Watch han acusado a FIFA de negligencia sobre su responsabilidad ante los millones de trabajadores migrantes que construirán los estadios e infraestructuras donde se celebrará el Mundial de Arabia Saudí de 2034. Estos informes se basan en investigaciones sobre las recientes muertes de 48 trabajadores migrantes procedentes de Bangladesh, India y Nepal. Estas muertes en Arabia Saudí se deben a accidentes y también al calor. Las familias de los fallecidos carecen de información sobre lo que realmente pasó y suelen tener que esperar mucho para recuperar los cuerpos de sus seres queridos. Los 2 informes critican a FIFA por no haber aprendido ninguna lección del Mundial de Qatar 2022, porque en efecto eso es exactamente lo que sucedió en Qatar. La rueda se ha puesto a girar otra vez y ya sabemos cómo acaba esto, con un número desconocido de trabajadores muertos, el país organizador mintiendo y FIFA lavándose las manos.
The playbook is the same, and in particular I fear that when it comes to labor rights and human rights, the playbook will be entirely the same.
En el caso de Qatar, FIFA argumentó hasta el Mundial que solo 3 personas habían muerto en las obras relacionadas con el Mundial. Sin embargo, durante el torneo, el jefe del Mundial, Hassan Al-Tawadi, reconoció que la cantidad era bastante superior.
The estimate is around 400. Between 400 and 500. I don't have the exact number. That's something that's being discussed.
Pero lo cierto es que miles de personas fallecieron en Qatar, aunque nunca sabremos la cifra exacta. The Guardian lanzó la cifra de 6.500, pero un informe de Amnistía Internacional de 2021 afirma que al menos 10.000 trabajadores migrantes habían muerto en Qatar desde que le concedieron el Mundial en diciembre de 2010.
We kind of saw two different stories. We saw the official PR story with people saying that everything is good and everything is fine, but the times we met with workers that was actually working on the ground and they had no bosses around or nobody official around, they told us different stories and everybody had a story to tell about not getting paid. They don't have their passports, they cannot change their jobs.
¿Cuál es la postura de FIFA al respecto? ¿Han pedido disculpas e indemnizado a los trabajadores y sus familias? ¿Está Infantino arrepentido de haber seguido con el plan de organizar el Mundial de Qatar? No exactamente. En el Congreso de FIFA de 2023 en Ruanda, Gianni Infantino celebró su reelección por aclamación, sacando pecho por el Mundial de Qatar.
Well, I promised you, when very few were believing it, that we would live the best World Cup ever. And we delivered. We organized the best World Cup ever. We had excellent stadiums, perfect infrastructure, no incident, zero incidents. And of course we took on board as well our responsibility to deal with human rights matters and to deal with the legacy.
A pesar de esas palabras, FIFA se ha lavado las manos respecto a los abusos cometidos en Qatar. Tras las acusaciones de miles de muertes, el Subcomité sobre Derechos Humanos y Responsabilidad Social de FIFA encargó a la organización Human Level un informe sobre su responsabilidad en los sucesos provocados por el Mundial. El informe fue encargado en marzo de 2023 y FIFA lo recibió en diciembre de ese año. En marzo de 2024, FIFA afirmó que sería publicado al mes siguiente, es decir, en abril de 2024. Tuvimos que esperar hasta noviembre para ver finalmente los hallazgos del informe a causa de la resistencia interna a que viera la luz. Sus conclusiones son claras. FIFA tiene la responsabilidad de compensar financieramente a los trabajadores perjudicados a causa de su labor en el Mundial de 2022. Según el informe, FIFA debe usar los 50 millones de dólares de su fondo para el legado de Qatar para compensar a estos trabajadores. Sin embargo, 2 días después de publicar el informe, FIFA anunció que ese dinero se destinaría a proyectos de desarrollo. Según el informe, se produjeron en Qatar violaciones de los derechos humanos de los trabajadores encargados de construir las infraestructuras para el Mundial, y FIFA contribuyó a esa situación. Además, FIFA firmó los principios directrices de Naciones Unidas sobre derechos humanos, que hace a las compañías responsables del impacto de su trabajo. Por otro lado, en sus propios estatutos, afirma que FIFA se compromete a proporcionar o cooperar para poner remedio en aquellas situaciones en que ha provocado o contribuido a un impacto negativo sobre los derechos humanos. Como defensa, FIFA argumentó que el informe que ellos mismos encargaron no constituye una evaluación legal de su obligación de compensar a los afectados.
I actually spoke to Matthias Grafström, the General Secretary, 6 months, the General Secretary of FIFA, 6 months before the human level report was published, and so 6 months before FIFA decided to ignore the recommendation of its own subcommittee. And so Grafström told me there will be a legacy fund and it will be done with FIFA money. And at the time, that was the FIFA Congress in Bangkok, I thought that, whoa, this is quite interesting. But then you see how it all played out, and it essentially is obviously a big slap in the face of all those migrant workers who suffered or who died and paid the worst price, and their families.
Precisamente fueron los impagos del sueldo y las reivindicaciones de los trabajadores los que provocaron uno de los casos más graves sucedidos en Qatar, el de Abdullah ibn Hais. Abdullah fue condenado por defender a miles de trabajadores migrantes hambrientos y desesperados. Estos trabajadores no habían recibido su salario por 6 meses y cientos de ellos estaban trabajando en los estadios del Mundial. Ante esta situación, su jefe, el secretario general del Comité Supremo, Hassan al-Tawadi, le ordenó que insistieran en redes sociales en que esta situación no tenía nada que ver con el Mundial, pero Abdullah había visitado y hablado con estos trabajadores migrantes y conocía su situación real, así que se negó a difundir la mentira que su jefe le había ordenado. Gracias al apoyo constante de los miembros de la media inglesa hemos podido viajar hasta Oslo para recabar varios testimonios que ilustran claramente lo que sucedió en Qatar, la violación de los derechos humanos que se produjo y también cuál ha sido el legado de ese Mundial y cuáles son los riesgos de que toda esta historia se repita de nuevo en Arabia Saudí en 2034.
So when they actually asked me to issue a statement saying that these are non-World Cup workers and that their claims have not been verified, actually discredit them. I was sure that I needed to go and make sure that whatever we are saying is true, because I've seen that we have been lying before. So when I went to the site of the strike, of course they had a strike on a highway. By the time I reached them, they were all asked to go back to their accommodation. So I went to one of the accommodations that hosted the striking workers. They had no food, no drinking water, no electricity. And that was in August. Degrees were like 51 or 49 degrees, the temperature. And they were basically, I asked them if they were working for the World Cup, and they said yes. And they showed me their pay slips. They haven't received any money for 6 months. So at the time, I went back to the SC and I said, no way I'm going to issue a statement saying that they are non-SC workers, but that their claims has not been verified. I have verified both facts. They are our workers, they work for the World Cup, and they haven't been paid for quite a long time. Now, to my surprise, the first reaction from the Workers' Welfare Department was, but we fired them long ago. I was like, what? You knew about this? And he said, yes, we knew about it and we fired them so it wouldn't backfire on us. So at that point, I knew that everything I've been saying was, not everything, most of the things that we were saying were lies. And I was part of it. I was part of a propaganda, not an actual change. Actually, when they actually told me that you have to issue, when Hassan told you have to put a spin on it, I just quit. And I sent my resignation twice afterwards, but they didn't accept. So this is where everything changed. They thought that I was a loose cannon, that I was about to quit, and what if I talked? And to discredit the SC on workers' welfare is to discredit Qatar as a whole. From that day, when I actually said I want to quit, they decided that I can't leave. And that what led to what happened afterwards. A few days after I went to the strike site and I quit, my manager at the time, Fatma Naimi, came to me and said, I want you to be part of a tender process. I was critical of all our tender processes in the SC. I didn't think it was transparent enough. So I refused at first, and she said, if you want to quit, if you want to leave, you have to do this. You're the media manager, we won't find anyone to do it in time. This is our biggest milestone that is coming. You need to do it, and then you can leave. And I accepted. And then we did the tender, and then we delivered our report. Immediately after delivering the report, they started an internal investigation about wrongdoing that has to do with the tender process. Of course, they found nothing during the internal investigation. This is what this is what the head of the internal investigation committee said in court. He said we found nothing wrong. But the moment the internal investigation started, I knew that something was coming. I knew that one day I'll go to work, they'll be waiting. And that's what happened. I went to work, and the director of human rights, the director of human resources, department called me. I went to his office, and the state security officers were there. They just took me into custody.
So that was actually the first day we were there. So we went to breakfast, and I got a text message saying that he was arrested. He thinks that the reason why he was arrested on that exact day was because he was going to meet with us later that day.
Los periodistas noruegos jamás consiguieron entrevistar a Abdullah Ibhais, pero sí que lograron una entrevista con Hassan al-Tawadi, aunque esa entrevista tampoco llegó a ver nunca la luz.
Yeah, so we finally got to interview with Hassan the last day we were there, and we asked him all the questions about migrant workers, about Abdullah Ibhais, about the changes he wanted to implement in Qatar, about Qatari government and maybe some pressure from outside. And when we were done, we were actually quite satisfied because we thought he told us a lot more than we expected him to tell us. So we went back to the hotel and we got our cameras and our equipment, and we were met at the front door by 4 or 5 police officers. So they just introduced themselves and said, "Hey, you guys need to go to the police station with us." And then we did, and we stayed there for 1.5 days. We did questioning, went to the public prosecution. We were afraid that we were going to stay there for some months before being released. And we asked for a lawyer. They said, "You can have a lawyer, but that will take some time." And they also said, like, "You don't really need it. I don't think you need it." So we were like, okay, should we still ask for a lawyer, or should we just go ahead without a lawyer? And we concluded to just go ahead. We also asked for permission to do a phone call. They always said, "Yeah, you can take a phone call if you want to. We just need to finish up what we're doing right now first." And we finished what we did, and we asked for a phone call, and they said, "Yeah, you can have a phone call, but we just need to finish this." And it just like, that was how it went all the time. So we were never allowed to make any phone calls. We didn't get our cameras with us. We didn't get anything with us. We got our passports and some of our luggage, and we were sent back to Norway. And when we finally got our cameras and our equipment, everything was deleted.
Y ahora volvamos a la historia de Abdullah Ibhais y de cómo le extrajeron su confesión.
Took me to interrogation. Of course, I couldn't meet a lawyer. I couldn't call anyone. And they wrote a print document, and they said, "You have to sign this. This is your confession." I was like, "Who confessed to that?" And they said, "You did. We know that there's an internal investigation, and we know everything about it." And they said, "What would happen?" Of course, I asked for a lawyer. They said, "He can't come in," and they didn't give me a call. And they said, "Even if you brought a lawyer somehow, we will not allow him in." They took me to a captain there, and he said, "Either you sign it now, or we send you to a place where they know how to get a confession out of you." And I said, "What have I done?" And he said, "You know, I have the power now to keep you," and he has the power to keep you in administrative detention for 6 months without reasons. And he said, "The simplest thing is I'll keep you here and never tell your family where you are." So I signed. When I finished with the police, I went to the public prosecution, which I thought should be a little bit more fair. I asked for a lawyer, and it was a state security prosecution. And he started laughing, and he said, "Do you think you're in an American movie?" And then he said, "I have already your confession from the police department. You just need to sign it again. And I will ask you though 4 questions first." He said, "You are accused of leaking defense secrets. You are accused of conspiring with foreign countries, trying to destroy or sabotage the World Cup, and sabotage the national economy." And then he added a 5th one, and he said, "You are accused of tampering with the tender process." No, I answered no. And he said, "Okay, so I'll cut you a deal." I said, "What is it?" He said, if you want your answers to stay the same, that you actually deny any wrongdoing, I will indict you with all the above, and you will be looking in life to death penalty, because you're espionage. So it's not as well. And if you deny the first 4 and then accept the 5th, I'll just transfer your papers to a different department. There you can get a lawyer, you can do whatever you want. And I said, so what are my options here? He said 5 years or death penalty. So that was that. And then all the proceedings that followed was built on that single document that I signed. The funny thing is, the tender that I was accused of sabotaging was not awarded. It was cancelled. So our final report, and I have it and I presented it to the judge, my final recommendation was to cancel the whole tender and reissue it. And then the sentence came that I actually awarded the tender to a non-deserving company, despite the document that was actually certified by the SC itself, saying that it was true. The hardest thing to face, as hard as it was to be away from the family, was the injustice, was the fact that they got what they wanted. They won at the end. And they had their moment under the spotlight. They had their moment of fame. Everything that went wrong with that World Cup didn't matter. Not the exploitation for workers, not the undelivered promises, not the lies, nothing mattered. At the end, there was Messi on a podium taking the picture. And it felt like total defeat. Ahead of the World Cup, they just brought huge TVs into the blocks. And then they asked the inmates if anyone wanted to subscribe to BN. So some of them paid for the subscription. And
Really?
Then, yes. And they didn't even pay for public viewing. They paid for private subscription inside. Anyhow, so they put their the huge TVs inside, and then we had to watch the World Cup 24 hours. There was nothing else that was allowed to be put on TV. A group of Pakistani inmates were cheering Ecuador against Qatar. So when Ecuador won, they just gave some packs of juices to everyone as a celebration of them winning. Immediately the next day, they were called to the warden, who moved them as a punishment. So he moves them between blocks without their belongings.
In general, that should have been the legacy, that human rights would not be violated again during or in the build-up to World Cup tournaments. But 2 years later, in 2024, FIFA and Infantino decisively pivoted to Saudi Arabia, essentially sending a signal that human rights do not matter when it comes as far as FIFA is concerned.
At the beginning, the first time I tried to contact them, I of course sent emails to Infantino, Fatma Samora, and then someone from Adidas introduced me to their director of human rights department. So when I first contacted him, he didn't reply unless I was endorsed by Adidas. Then he actually acknowledged my existence and replied. And he asked for documents. I sent the documents to him. And once he knew it was real and he saw all the documents that support my argument, he said, okay, so apply for a complaint in the whistleblowing system, which I did. And then he, instead of interacting with me or replying to me, it was like a statement issued through the whistleblowing system. It just said, we will work closely with Qatar to ensure fair trial, period. And from that moment onward, FIFA never replied to us.
Arabia Saudí organizará el Mundial de 2034. A pesar de las evidentes faltas de respeto a los derechos humanos en el país, en su evaluación de la candidatura, FIFA evalúo el riesgo de vulneración de esos derechos simplemente como medio.
Saudi has all the resources and the money to convince everyone.
Y mientras Arabia Saudí se prepara para organizar un nuevo mundial a costa de la vida de los trabajadores migrantes, como sucedió exactamente en Qatar, FIFA ha organizado un mundial de clubes donde los equipos participantes se distribuirán un botín de $1.000 millones. Esos equipos se distribuirán esa enorme cantidad de dinero y mientras los trabajadores que participaron en la construcción de los estadios en Qatar y sus familias siguen sin ver un solo céntimo.
FIFA is in a worse place than it was 10 years ago when FIFA Gate happened. I think it's in a worse place than under Sepp Blatter. Gianni Infantino presented himself as this big reformer, but he gradually dismantled the internal checks and balances, and he has become all-powerful in the organization.
I'm an investigating journalist. I want to cover Saudi Arabia and to look into what's happening there. Are they actually going to change? As of now, I don't even know if I'm allowed to enter Saudi Arabia, if it's possible for me to go to Saudi Arabia to have a look in the conditions of migrant workers or stuff like that. And I think it's, I hope that FIFA wants to do some changes and they have learned from the experience with Qatar, but I'm not sure if they have.
Once again, exemplified at the FIFA Congress in Paraguay. He arrived late at his own FIFA Congress because he decided he needed to be by Donald Trump's side in the Middle East, and yet no one, but virtually no one, apart from a symbolic walkout by European federations, really protested.
I think that Qatar opened the gate. I wouldn't say it was Qatar, it was Russia that opened the gate for FIFA, where human rights were no longer part of the event itself. It doesn't matter. And they decided that it's only a show, and whoever puts a better show is awarded the tournament. It no longer serves a purpose. It's no longer a celebration of diversity, equality, and civilization or human rights. It's only a show that brings money. And that the moment that FIFA turned the World Cup into a product, I think that was the end of ethical World Cups.